this change single-handedly enables this Ascendancy to now be the premier choice for this archetype, and this will cause one of the biggest shifts in this archetype, and is probably why I am actually going to play. Hi guys, Asmo here, and today I have for you my opinions, thoughts and predictions for the 3.24 patch Necropolis, which is going to be releasing next week. And we have the patch notes already. I read through all of the patch notes, and I'm going to give you basically my summary of all of the most interesting and all of the most notable things that I have noticed. There are so many different changes. I made a bunch of notes. Some of it is going to be definitely my personal take on this, and some of this is going to be something that you can expect to be affecting everybody. Speaking of my personal things, I was planning on starting, like many other people, Guardian SRS, because it was incredibly powerful, possibly the single strongest build on like zero budget when it comes to like clearing your first watchstones and just completing the Atlas early on. However, this has been nerfed by a lot. So if we do Raging, right, summon Raging Spirits, we have 38% more damage to the melee attack, which is what you would be normally scaling. That is absolutely obliterated. So it's like about 40% damage nerf here roughly. And then also if we look at Sentinel, we have Sentinel of Radiance, which has been nerfed from 30% of its base life as damage over time AoE to 20%. So this is roughly 50% nerf as well. So huge amount of nerfs for this archetype. It's still going to be playable, it's still going to be okay, but it's no longer going to be as strong as before. So that is completely changed. Now I'm gonna have to play something else. There have been many different changes to skills. There have been a lot of skills that have received buffs, but most of these skills are already like they're still not good enough to be played. The thing that I look for usually is I'm looking for something that is already being played, and I'm looking if it has a buff, because very often GG just overlooks that. So one of those things that I'm potentially going to be starting, at least early on, is going to be Frostblink Ignite. So Frostblink Ignite already was okay. It was already a very nice skill to clear. Where is it? Flicker, Frostblades, Frostblink. There we go. Now it has 250% effectiveness of added damage instead of 180. So any added cold damage you can get, because added cold damage then gets converted by cold to fire, and then you get added cold as fire as well. So cold is more effective than fire itself. Any added cold damage, for example, on your weapons, where you can get the flat, you can get like Mute Wind boots or whatever they're called that have flat cold. You can get flat cold on jewels. Anything like that is going to be increased by roughly like 30%. So this is a very nice buff, especially early on if you can get these like the Mute Wind unique, if you can get some rings with like flat added cold or like amulet added cold. There's a bunch of stuff you can get to leverage this. So that's one of the things that has been improved. Another huge buff that people are missing, I haven't seen anybody talk about this, it is per ailment. If we look at this, Yoke of Suffering. So now enemies take 5 to 10% increased damage for each type of ailment you've inflicted on them. So you're going from 15% increased damage to 30%. So this is 15% more damage, right? Massive increase for basically like the tri-element attack skills, right? Things like Lightning Arrow. If you want to play Lightning Arrow and have like 3 different elements, this is going to be amazing, right? For that, especially early on. So Yoke of Suffering is definitely going to be hugely buffed. Let's look at my list and see what else I have here. Okay, so we have Rush for Voidstone, farming T17 mouse might be a thing. Okay, so few things about this league. First of all, the league mechanic I'm going to address in a moment, but let me talk about the general thing that's going to happen this league that you're going to notice. First of all, the campaign is going to be more difficult for 2 reasons. Number one is going to be you're forced to do the league mechanic every single zone, right? So every single zone is going to have monsters that are buffed, so it's going to be more difficult. You cannot opt out of it, you can only min-max it, but most people are just going to not bother with that. They're just going to go into the zone and either die or not die. So a lot of people are going to be spending extra time, and yeah, if they're not spending extra time fighting the monsters, then they had to spend extra time like fiddling with the minion modifiers, right? The monster modifiers on the on the device, on the whatever this thing lantern, right? So that's why people will be slower. People will be significantly slower to maps. I would say maybe like 20 to 30% slower to maps. And then in the early maps, people will be slower as well. People will be fiddling with those things as well. And that's going to be causing that. Another thing that's going to happen, because people will be slower, the general progression of everybody will be slower, and also people will be poor. People, just like in Calandra League, just like in Crucible, they'll be poor because this is a crafting league. In a crafting league, usually what happens is people have slightly stronger characters because they make like a couple of items for themselves, but they spend so much time doing that because the league mechanic usually typically doesn't, it's not as efficient as crafting with other methods like deterministically using like fractured items and essences and stuff like that. So people will be significantly slower, significantly poorer, and that will basically slow them down. What that means is that the higher tier content, which are the new T17 maps, is going to be accessed by fewer people early on. It's going to be basically only the people who are pushing for it, right? Only the people who are playing a dedicated, like a trapper build, dedicated, there's so many different archetypes actually, it doesn't really matter the archetype, but like a dedicated bosser build that has a lot of single target damage that will be able to do these T17 maps early on and the bosses. So if you can get to Void Stones, if you can get 4 Void Stones very quickly, if you're playing a build and you just don't care about the league mechanic and you're just blasting through, going for the T17 maps, like going for the T16 maps and 4 Void Stones, because each Void Stone increases the chance that you have for dropping T17 maps. So you want to get 4 Void Stones as soon as possible if you're doing this strategy. And for most people, I don't recommend this strategy because you're going to be too weak. You have to have a very, very strong build, right? So if you feel like you are like the top 1% of players in terms of like how strong your build is, then go ahead. If you're not, probably don't try to do it because you're just gonna hit the wall. So get 4 Void Stones and then farm T16 maps with as many Kartos Scarabs as you possibly can. So you will be buying Kartos Scarabs early on as much as possible. You'd be picking up every single node on the tree for additional map drops, and you will be getting as many T17 maps as possible, and then run these T17 maps and get the Uber fragments, and either sell the Uber fragments to boss runners or just run them yourself, right, if you have a strong enough build. But the T17 maps might be very expensive early on. Basically, as you know, like Guardian maps tend to be pretty expensive early on, even though people run like destructive play, which is still going to be a thing, but you have to run it a little bit differently now. You're going to have to run specific maps with specific layouts where you get to clear most of the monsters on the way, because now destructive play makes it so that you spawn more bosses at the end if you have fewer monsters in the map. So you are incentivized to clear the map and then you get a bigger reward for it. So because of that, you want to run maps like Strand, you want to run maps like Beach, where you can just clear every single monster very, very quickly and then go into that map, right? So for example, something like Glacier, that would be like another good map for destructive play, where it's a very quick map, very small map, it's easy to kill every single monster, or just about, and then kill the boss and you get more bosses at the end. Then we have, speaking of like killing bosses, there's some crazy shit as well about that I'm going to tell you. Like, I'm going to give you some really interesting strategies here, because that's mostly what I looked at, and like that's mostly what I found out. Really, really interesting strategies. So farming T17 maps might be a thing. Then we have potential Delhi Scarabs being more valuable and better to farm, because there are so many Scarabs. Scarabs might be actually more valuable in general. Some of them are going to be less likely, some of them are going to be more likely, but it's still, I don't think it's going to be as big of a difference as the difference between like winged Scarabs and rusted Scarabs, right? The difference between rusted Scarabs and winged Scarabs was like half a divine or whatever, right? In price, really, really big difference. But in this new version of the Scarabs, I think it's not going to be such a big difference. So potentially Delhi Orbs might be more valuable and might be better to, like the Mirror of Delirium might be very profitable to farm for these, because just in general, Delhi Orbs will be more valuable since you can reroll them with Harvest, right? You can reroll full stacks with Harvest. Then there's a 3-to-1 Scarab Recipe. So the wording on this, Scarab rework, we have previous vendor recipes for Scarabs have been removed, though we have added a new vendor recipe that can be used to trade 3 Scarabs for a single Scarab of type different from those vendored. So here's the thing, depends what they mean. Different from those vendor, is those Scarabs refers to Scarabs or is those types? Right? Because if this means types, that would potentially mean that you can vendor 3 different Scarabs together and get a Scarab that is neither of those types, right? So that would allow you to be a little bit more efficient and potentially that recipe could be good, but most likely it's probably still going to be like 3 of the same Scarab, and then you get some random one that is not this type of Scarab that you vendored. But this is something that should be definitely tested because there is a potential there to like flip them into better Scarabs. Essence Drain of Desperation. I was thinking, I don't know if anybody tested the Essence Drain Desperation. 50% more damage at all gem levels is absolutely insane. This is insurmountable. This amount of debuff damage is insurmountable short of Tainted Pact. If you can figure out how to have a decent amount of hit damage, right? Somehow, so that, or like huge amount of leech somehow, so that you can, or like poison, right? Is it poison? Yeah, I think it's based on poison, right? So if you can like poison with Essence Drain and then reflect that poison to yourself and then have Tainted Pact heal you based on that poison, then you can potentially out heal this, right? This is like one mechanic that I think would allow you to potentially play this skill. Otherwise, it would be impossible to heal, right? You would be doing such an insane amount of damage. Another way to do it is potentially traps. The problem is if you have a trap that casts Essence Drain and then that is the debuff, like you're not getting healed or you're not getting damaged, then also if you're doing something like Contagion, if you put that Contagion and then it spreads, if you casted the Contagion, do the spread things affect you or not? Because the source is the trap, but then the source of the Contagion is you, and then the Contagion spreads the Essence Drain. It's pretty tricky. Maybe you would have to have something else like a trap also casting Contagion. Who knows? Maybe that would be something that potentially can be done, but that will probably lose you so many sockets that it might not be worth at that point this damage increase. So this is a very, very crazy potential skill that can be played around. We already talked about the campaign being more difficult. Oh, this is another crazy strategy, okay? So this is a crazy strat that I can tell you about. You have these things called all flames, right? So the all flames, I have a bunch of pictures here for all of these different things. So where are the all flames? There should be all flames somewhere. So the all flames, this is it, right? So what they do is they basically affect all of the specific types of monsters in that map. So, you know, if you're going into a map and you're going into cells, for example, and you know that there's lots of skeletons there, right? And let's say 50% of the monsters is skeletons. And if you have like a really good all flame, what you do is you apply this to a specific type of monster in that area, right? And you basically, what you want to do is you want to find a map that has like almost all of the same monster, right? You want to find the most uniform map possible, because that will make it so that you can use all flames of a specific type and just farm whatever it gives you, right? So you can potentially farm tattoos that way, or you can farm whatever else the all flames give you. If you can like basically be just buying good all flames and then putting them on a specific map, just like you can chain open map, right? And if you get options for these specific monsters, then you're going to be able to apply that, right? So what we're looking for, like if type it if you know in the comments below, like what would be a good map for the all flames that has lots of the same type of monster, right? Like just like one type of monster is like most of the map. That would be amazing. And also we want to see if this works with sea witches, right? Because if this respects the modifiers, you could potentially have a situation where you have all of the monsters being sea witches, or area is inhabited by goats or something like that. And then when you have maps with these modifiers and you put them in the map device, and if it only shows that monster, right? You have like big witches and small witches, and you just apply it to one of them, you apply the all flame to one of them, and that's like almost all of the monsters in that map being affected by this, right? So that would be something that potentially can be abused with the all flames, this modifiers on maps that give you specific types of monsters only. Okay, so sniping good all flames, for example, the tattoo ones could be a strategy. Yoke of Suffering already talked about. Thorough exploration with wisps could work with map boss. Yeah, so for example, there is map boss. I don't know if this map is available, but a map boss that drops like a Sephiroth card, right, which gives you a divine, basically. and other cards that drop from bosses specifically, the thorough exploration might be really nice, right? It might also be really nice with destructive play and going for the map drops. It might be good with a lot of different strategies that basically you can target the bosses, make the bosses harder and harder, and this would be pretty insane, right? Then we have Anarchy Scarabs with significant troves. So if we type Control F, significant troves, right? So we have added a new Scarab cluster to the Atlas tree with the notable significant troves. It provides unique monsters in your maps have 200% increased chance to drop Scarabs, with the 2 small passives each provide 4% increased Scarabs found in your map. So basically, unique monsters have drop 3 times as many Scarabs, right? What you can do is, again, you can run maps like Glacier, where you have tons of unique monsters at the end of a boss. You can also run maps with that have Beyond will give you actually not that many anymore because it's changed Beyond, so there's only 1 unique. But another thing you can do is you can run Anarchy Scarabs, right? So if you get Anarchy Scarabs, which give you Rogue Exiles, and then you run something like Ruckus, right? And there's another like map that has another thing that has chance for Rogue Exiles. So where is it? Rogue Exile. There are now 4 additional exile spawn chance small Atlas passives in the Rogue Trade cluster, each providing your maps have 25% chance to contain additional Rogue Exile, right? So instead of like 10%, now we get 25, so we get almost 3 times as many percentage chance for additional Rogue Exile. So you can get Rogue Exile here, you can get Rogue Exiles from the map device, and you will be able to basically farm Scarabs like crazy, right? So basically you'd have to have pretty strong build because these sometimes can be very, very dangerous, especially with a lot of different mods, but that's one possible way of like adding extra Scarab drops to your maps, right? So you're basically picking up all of the Scarab nodes, which is a huge amount. They actually are intending for people to just like farm Scarabs just through the Atlas tree, and I think it's a little bit excessive. Like there is a huge amount of Scarab nodes, but you could pick just all of them, get the Anarchy Scarabs, significant troves, spec into the Ruckus, get ghosts as well, right? Get also ghosts which will possess the monsters, and you can kill them themselves, which are also unique monsters, right? So you would run like Torment Scarabs and Anarchy Scarabs with all of the Scarab nodes, and then farm just like an insane amount of Scarabs, right? You'll be just constantly dropping Scarabs, and potentially if you spec into other nodes, you can even self-sustain your Anarchy and Torment Scarabs, and you can also still farm other ones, right? So that is another potential strategy that can be made with this. Corrupted aid mod farming with Twist of Fate and increased effective modifiers per mod. So yeah, so we have Twist of Fate. What it does now, it also adds 1 to 3 additional random map modifiers, right? Which is absolutely insane because there is another thing. So map modifier, we have, where is it? At the new Atlas, okay. So new Atlas passes, mounting modifiers, which provides 2% increased effective modifiers on your maps per explicit modifier. So this gives you additional effect of modifiers per modifier. So if you run like an 8 mod corrupted map with additional 1 to 3 modifiers from this, and then if you put I don't know I don't think Scarabs or anything like that will count for this, but like the more modifiers you get, there might be also Atlas passives, other Atlas passives that allow you to get more modifiers on the maps. And then if you run also like T17 maps, which give you which I think they have more modifiers as well, that will be absolutely insane as well, right? You can have like a huge effect of these modifiers. The problem with that then is that you have these modifiers that are absolutely insane, so many builds will not be able to do them. Good builds that can do that are typically builds that are not hit based builds, right? So you have a not hit, not ailment, so something like Toxic Rain, Caustic Arrow. Those two are very, very good at doing all kinds of map modifiers. Basically, every single map modifiers can be done with these. If you can get somehow very, very low mana cost, even using like Life Tap or something, if you can get a low mana cost on Toxic Rain, or if you can have, for example, Mana Flask that you're relying on, and then bypassing the fact that you can have like less recovery, or you cannot leech or things like that, because there'll be very, very nasty modifiers on these, you can potentially make a build build that will be very good at farming these maps, and you can also do the same strategy as like farming scarabs and stuff like that with them, right? So that's another crazy way to farm stuff. Then a low cost on map device. Okay, so here's another consequence for the economy. So map device. If we look at map device, where is it? Kirak mods, okay? So this is something that we had a really good example of this in, for example, Heist League. Heist League had a map craft that costed like 16 chaos or something, and it was, I think, Deli Mirror, right? Is there Delirium? Delirium costs 7 chaos here. It costed like 16 chaos, okay? And then it was league where exalts were what divines are now, and basically exalts were just tanked in price like crazy because people were doing heist and they were getting raw exalts, just like tons of them, so there was huge influx of them. And at the same time, there was a huge chaos sink, right? So the idea of chaos sink, the idea of like price of divines, often doesn't really have anything to do with divines. It has to do with the inflation of chaos, right? And how much chaos there is, which sometimes it depends on like bots and the ban waves of the bots. That's a hugely influential factor. However, there is also the fact that certain map craft device options are very popular or not popular. So if people are like, if there was like 13 divines or like around 10 to 15 divines craft Kirak mod that people were using to, for example, spawn harvest, right, every single map, then it would be a huge chaos sink. But right now you can see all of these costs are super low. And then another thing is that you don't even need to do them because there is such a huge amount of access to the extra chance to spawn these things. Like if you want expedition, you can only get one expedition, right? If you want something like harvest, you can only get one harvest. So you can guarantee or almost guarantee that from either the Scarab or your Atlas tree. So you no longer need a lot of these crafts, which means these crafts are not going to be, people are less likely to pay for them. So people are less likely to spend chaos on this. People are less likely to spend chaos in general. And that means there is going to be more chaos in the circulation. And more chaos in the circulation because of the lower sink for chaos means lower chaos value, basically just regular inflation, which means higher div price, right? So divines will cost more chaos, and dropping raw divines or dropping more expensive things is going to be more valuable. So that's one of the consequences. Mjolnir is potentially buffed. I saw the changes to the Archmage. They're absolutely insane. So this is one of the biggest changes. Archmage, some of the Archmage builds, like the Archmage brand builds, have been absolutely destroyed. But you no longer have to like spend mana. You no longer get damage based on the mana you spend. You have damage based on how much mana you have, right? So this is a complete change of the mechanic. Absolutely just complete reversal of how this works. You no longer need to like make sure that you're spending as much mana as possible. You just need to have a lot of mana, and then you're gonna get damage based on the percentage of that. So this enables different things, like for example Mjolnir, right? Mjolnir is potentially going to be very, very strong, so I would definitely anticipate that going up in price. Another mana skill that is going to be very strong is probably gonna be mana forged arrows. So different mana forged arrows, like mana forged arrows, mana stacking builds, the build that people are using for Delph, for example. This is going to be something that's going to be extremely strong, and as far as I know, there is no nerfs to this here. So that's another build that was like kind of missed by these patch notes. So there is some crazy stuff with that going on, and Mjolnir probably is going to be buffed and significantly more expensive. Now there are a set of modifiers that cause strongboxes to contain additional scarabs of a particular type. This is pretty cool because you can, especially in SSF, I guess, you can roll these to be very specific, right? If you're specifically looking for like div card scarabs, right? You can roll it with like alterations or chaos or scour alk or whatever you want, and that's gonna be ornate strongboxes and large strongboxes and regular strongboxes, right? So those three strongboxes will have modifiers. The modifiers are basically when you alk it when it's rare or magic, that say, drops additional ambush scarabs or drops additional whatever scarabs, and then you can basically use engineering orbs, you can spam alts or whatever until you get the expensive scarabs, and then do that. Depending on how time consuming it will be and what are the weights on these modifiers, it might not be worth, but this is something just to look into, right, if it's potentially possible. Then we have purge speed tattoos for Spark. I think I wrote this probably twice because this is a very, very big QoL change for Spark. So projectile speed. If we look at projectile speed, we have tattoo of the Ramako sniper, 5% projectile speed. So one of the biggest problems of Spark builds is that they are very far away from the projectile speed nodes. Trickster can kind of get away with it, but Templar is on the absolute opposite side of the tree. So Templar couldn't really access these projectile speed nodes, which made it a little bit worse. And for example, the Mjolnir build could potentially use Spark with the mana stacking. You could have other different like stacking builds that can use this. Definitely just a regular Inquisitor caster could be very strong with Spark, but it couldn't get enough projectile speed, which was the difficult part, right? And you had to sacrifice something, and that's why this is very, very strong. And definitely we're gonna see some resurgence of Spark. It's gonna be one of the more popular builds probably in the end game. What else do we have? Dorian's Epiphany. Okay, so we have some divination cards that are returning. So we have cards that give you corrupted 21 transfigure gem with 23% quality and 21 with 20 quality. So this is potentially an interesting thing to flip, because you're going to be able to get early guaranteed transfigures gems with like 21, 23. Depending on the number of really good transfigure gems, you basically will have to go onto trade, look up all of the single transfigure gem. Like if I was going to flip this is what I would do. I would look up every single transfigure gems. I would have like a list of all of them, and then I would write a price of all of them, and then I would write the average, right? And then I would write the average for a set of these, right? And then if the average for a set of these is, let's say, I don't know, let's say 10 chaos, and an average price of a 2120 or 2123, where it matters, probably just look at 2120 because you won't have enough of these. It's going to be like, you know, 5 divines, right? Then this is something that can be worth it, right? Because you're gonna have a huge amount of profits possible with this. So this is something I would look for. Probably shouldn't be putting this in a video, but that's okay. You guys can benefit from it. Essence memories. So essence memories potentially are buffed, because I haven't seen anything about essence memories. So essence, we have a lot of stuff for essences. So we got essence strain of desperation. That's not an essence. We got crystal resonance modifier. A map boss is granted random essence modifier. So okay, you can have basically. Will he drop an essence? I guess he will drop an essence as well. Then we have essence scarabs. We have essence scarabs. What else do we have? Okay, there we go. 1 essence at the highest possible tier. So instead of getting all of your essences being 1 tier higher, this will now give you 1 essence at the highest possible tier. However, that tier is not the highest tier of essence. It's the highest possible for that tier of maps, which here we can see that in white maps it's maximum screaming, and yellow and red maps it's maximum shrieking. So this is something that is kind of a nerf. I think it's gonna be like guaranteed decent essence, so you're never gonna have like a terrible essence. It depends on all of the other nodes, right? But essence farming is gonna be a little bit different. You're gonna have to pay more attention to this, and potentially the memories are going to be the better way of farming essences, which can be done very early on. 100% melee immunity golem. What is that? Well, if you look at golem, there is now a stone golem with safeguarding with 15% melee damages taken from your stone golems before you, previously 10%. So because you can get golem buff effect modifiers on your tree and playing as an elementalist, these golem buffs can be scaled enough to get 100% melee damage taken from your stone golems, which means your character is immune to melee damage. You can then also take a bunch of evasion and then pick a keystone that lowers your evasion for melee attacks because you no longer need it because you're immune to them, but increases your evasion to ranged attacks. And now ranged attacks cannot hit you, melee attacks you're immune to, and then you just get spell suppression, spell block, and you're insanely tanky, right? So this is potentially broken. Huge increase. Then we have here, let me look at these changes because these are actually very interesting to me. like the Chaos Golem of Maelstrom, apparently like this doesn't stack, right? So you can only have one at a time. And then if you're scaling this golem damage, like it doesn't really work that well. The Golem Meteor skill, it's pretty interesting because the base damage of this skill is so hard to find. I looked at POE Wiki, I looked at POE DB, I looked at POB, and only in POB I could find some information on this. And basically the average was like 1,600, I think, the average hit. So now with this, it's going to be a little bit, it's going to be like, what, 50% more? It's going to be over 2,000 base damage, or as I looked at it, around 2,000 base damage, which would be nice for like an Ignite skill, but I don't think this actually works with your Ignite. It is like a skill that is dealt by the minion itself, right? Because it looks in a way where you're summoning a golem and the golem drops from the sky, kind of like the guys from Act 4, right? In the Kaun's Dream Zone. However, this is a skill used by the minion and not by you, so you cannot leverage like your ignites, and you have to leverage the minion stuff. So this has really nice base damage now, but I don't think the delay and the limited scaling for this will allow it to be very powerful just yet. The Skeleton Archers are gonna be pretty good. I played Skeleton Archers before. I played them with Syndicate Operatives. I had like probably 300 million DPS on that build. It was a code converted Skeleton Archers Necromancer. It was an amazing build. I evaporated all of the bosses in the game that existed at the time. It was fun mapping, one of the most powerful builds I have ever made. And this is potentially something that I might be playing because of the changes to the Necromancer. So if I look at the Ascendancy Changes, this is huge. So we have the Mindless Aggression change, which gives us, instead of 10% increased attack speed, cast speed, and move speed, and 30% increased damage, it now has 10% more damage, which is, in the end game, a little bit better than all of these, and then 20% more maximum life, which has been moved from the Bone Barrier. And then, most importantly, the Bone Barrier Ascendancy passive skill no longer grants level 20 Bone Armor skill and no longer provides a 2% increased life recovery, blah, blah, blah. But it still provides physical PDR, right? It still provides PDR. And then minions don't have maximum life. That's been moved to the previous one. And then it provides minions have 40% of life as extra energy shield. Cool. And then 1% of damage dealt by your minions is leached to you as life. This change single-handedly enables this Ascendancy to now be the premier choice for this archetype, and this will cause one of the biggest shifts in this archetype, and is probably why I am actually going to play a Necromancer this league, because this is going to be absolutely insane. I already, for so many leagues, I wanted to make like a perma minion simulacrum farmer that can be AFK, and this is something that I potentially can do this league. So if you look at my notes, one of the things that I'm thinking about playing is Summoner Simulacrum AFK Farmer with Leech and Perma Spectre stacking. So if you look at the uniques, let me see, where are the uniques? There are the new uniques or like reworked uniques that are very, very cool. Let me scroll, there we go. So Wraithlord, right? 4 Abyss sockets, and I think this is guaranteed for Abyss sockets based on the wording in the patch notes. +2 to all minion gems, +1 to number of specters per ghastly. Basically 4 specters, but you cannot have other minions. Completely fine. You're going to be scaling auras, right? So this is going to be kind of like an aura stacker with specters. So you're going to want to find the best specters for scaling as many auras as possible. And then you're going to be leveraging all of the Necromancer stuff, right? So you're going to be leveraging the fact that you're getting attack speed, cast speed per aura on them. You're going to be leveraging the leech, and it's going to be absolutely insane because you can park your character in a simulacrum, and if you make your specters tanky enough to not die, you're not gonna die because they're gonna do insane amount of damage and heal you all the time, and you're gonna have great recovery while not doing anything. So this is probably, I'm gonna try to transition into this from my starter build as soon as possible, because this is absolutely insane. I'm very excited for this. The Mana Storm unique is actually also pretty interesting because we get a huge increase to the damage for this. So Mana Storm, mana stacking, potentially there's something there. But yeah, the Wraithlord, I'm very, very excited for. What else happened? Mana Forge Arrow stacking potentially being the strongest build of the league, that's for sure. Then we have Soul Eater and Headhunter nerf. Yes, Soul Eater Eater was basically limited to 45 stacks. So now as a Headhunter player, you're getting fewer stacks. You're not getting all of the crazy attack speed. I mean, you're still getting crazy attack speed, cast speed, but sorry, not as much as before. And then mana, oh my god, the mana nerf on Mage Blood, that is absolutely crazy. Mana, okay. This is insane. This was like, well, just a huge insane nerf, I guess. That's all there is to it. We just got nerfed like crazy. So first of all, the Veiled modifier that provides reduced mana cost of skill during effect can no longer be unveiled or crafted on Flask. This is like the most ridiculous mana nerf that ever has happened in this game, probably. It's like 315 all over again, because you would be getting basically 50% reduced mana cost if you were either Pathfinder or if you were using Mage Blood, right? So Pathfinder and Mage Blood both got nerfed like crazy. This is like an absolutely insane nerf. And then another thing that has been nerfed is the Jewel suffix modifier that grants reduced mana can no longer roll. This is, I think this is completely uncalled for. This modifier was just useful to sometimes fix your mana a little bit. Like, you would be playing a build, just a regular build, like not even Mage Blood build. You're not abusing any crazy mechanics, right? You're not abusing anything broken. You just want to do your shit, right? You just want to play your fucking build. And then you're like, oh, the mana cost is a little bit high, but if I do some adjustments and put a couple of these modes on my jewels, right, I sacrifice some damage, I sacrifice some survivability, right? I don't get like the extra, I don't get extra whatever modifiers you can get on a suffix here, because this is a suffix, and I get like, you know, 9-10% reduced mana cost, and then it starts being okay, and then I can cast my thing consistently. Like, no, now you no longer can adjust the build this way, right? I think that's a pretty sad change. That's very uncalled for. I understand the Flask one, right, because of the Mage Blood abuse, which is completely disproportionate to any other build, and Mage Blood already was like super broken, and there's more nerfs to Mage Blood. But this jewel, I don't think this is deserved, right? And it's insane because. And it's insane because they didn't nerf Adorned, right? Like, I have a whole section here that is hidden that I don't want to show. Because Adorned is so freaking broken. I mean, I've predicted this. I knew that they're not going to nerf Adorned, and it's going to take them 2 or 3 leagues to realize how terrible it is for the game. Because, mark my words, I don't know, 90% of endgame builds will be using Adorned. Like, almost every single build at a high enough budget, like once you get enough currency, you're switching to the Adorned setup, no matter what you're playing. I don't care if you're playing minions, caster, attack, ranged, bow, damage over time, bleed, poison, whatever you're playing, Adorned is the best way to build this character, right? It's just broken. It's just absolutely broken. If you have enough currency, the Adorned is broken, which is why I'm thinking of making a Simulacrum farmer, because the Adorned takes advantage of the voices. The voices drop from the Simulacrum, so Simulacrum potentially could be really good. So one potential like strategy loop this league could be to make a character that can farm Daily Mirror, get a bunch of Simulacrums, right? Because if Simulacrums are good, then they're going to be more expensive as well. Get a bunch of Daily Orbs for Scarabs as well, because Scarabs are going to be very much in demand. Everything you do with maps has to do with Scarabs now, so everybody will want Scarabs. Scarab selling, Scarab flipping, Scarab bulking will potentially be really good as well. So do this strategy first, and then use those Simulacrums and just run them, right? So Simulacrum stuff, Simulacrum related stuff might be potentially really good. And then also like put jewels on your filters. You're gonna get a bunch of them as well. That can potentially be very strong. Yeah, so those are basically my thoughts. I'm thinking of starting a few different things. So Poison Skeleton Archers is something that I've been trying to justify playing for a while. Now there's actually a very good way to do it, because we have 100% conversion, we have Wither on hit, on a Necromancer, we have so many different options for this, and then also there is, for example, a chest, the Blight chest, that gives you Explode, right? So with like 100% chance to poison, if you're doing mostly poison damage, you can explode the monsters, because it's you killing. That's a very complicated mechanic, I might explain it if I'm playing this build. But yeah, so Poison Skeleton Archers could be really good. Ignite Elementalist with like Frostblink and Val Flame Blast, something like that, could be very good as well, because you get fast clear speed, good single target damage, right? So that might be really good. Golem Mentalist might be possible, might be possibly better now as well. Soul Rest or Poison Soul Rest, that's another thing, like Elemental Soul Rest with Leech, or the Poison will get less Leech because you do less hit damage. Something like that is potentially what I'm playing, and then later transitioning maybe to CI, right? So like Simulacrum AFK Farmer with Leech, Perma Specters, stacking 9 Specters with CI, and you can be AFK and you can craft at the same time. You can like roll Cluster Jewels or hurl regular jewels at the same time as you're doing Simulacrum, and you're making insane amount of currency per hour. This is something that I'm potentially going to explore. So I'm definitely starting like a Necromancer or Elementalist, right? There's like no other, like no way around it that I'm not gonna do that. For sure, Elementalist or Necromancer is my start. But yeah, and then early on, another thing that's gonna be really good is gonna be also Betrayal, right? So Betrayal is going to give you a way to target specific Scarabs, and then you're also going to get Veiled Orbs. So I'm probably going to be doing Betrayal early on. I might be doing Essence Memories early on, and then get into one of those strategies. But that's it, basically. Those are the basically my observations, my predictions about the league. Let me know what you have found. What are some cool things that I maybe missed? Tell me in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.